Hello, Mr. Congressman. Thank you for joining us. You have been the leading advocate in Congress for Armenian genocide recognition. But these days, as we commemorate the victims of the Armenian genocide, Azerbaijan, backed by Turkey, keeps threatening Armenia. What do you think? What should the international society do to restrain Azerbaijan's aggressiveness?
Well, first of all, I've long championed recognition of the Armenian genocide. I carried the resolution to recognize the genocide for around 20 years until we finally passed it some years ago by a overwhelming bipartisan vote in the House, and a similar resolution passed in the Senate. And I was very proud that President Biden broke decades of shameful silence in also becoming the first sitting U.S. president to recognize the genocide. The resolution and the recognition have a very important contemporary significance because acts of genocide are going on now. There's an effort by Azerbaijan and by Turkey to pick up where the genocide left off with unprovoked acts of war against Armenia and Artsakh. And so I think the United States and the international community need to vigorously intervene to maintain the peace, to end the blockade of the Lachen corridor. Just this morning, I introduced a resolution recognizing the independence of Artsakh. I'd like to see the United States now working to recognize an independent Artsakh. I think that would provide a greater measure of security and support against this continuing belligerence from Baku.
Azerbaijan has set up a checkpoint in Lachen corridor. What's your assessment? What is Azerbaijan trying to achieve?
They are trying to amp up the pressure and essentially starve out the people of Artsakh, to deprive them of critical medicines and healthcare, to deprive them of food and other necessities of life. This is their way of exerting sovereignty over a sovereign people, a way of essentially repealing the right of self-determination of the people of Artsakh by use of military force and coercion. And I think it's also the result, frankly, of too many statements by the international community, including the United States, statements of moral equivalency, calling on both sides to stop acts of provocation when there is only one belligerent here, and that belligerent is Azerbaijan. So I'm deeply concerned about this latest action by Azerbaijan to tighten the noose around Artsakh. And the international community and the United States need to speak out with much greater force, use all the diplomatic tools at our disposal to end this blockade and also end this gradual war by Azerbaijan. I've never been more concerned, frankly, that there may be another major outbreak of war, that Azerbaijan may intend another invasion of Armenia or Artsakh or both, to try to further remake the map of the region by military force.
But the thing is that we don't see many countries taking real measures such as imposing sanctions on Azerbaijan.
There should be sanctions on Azerbaijan. And the first step, though, has to be to stop U.S. support for Azerbaijan. I have been urging the administration now for years to cut off military or economic support for Azerbaijan. They don't need it, they don't deserve it, and what's more, it violates the law. Section 907 of the Freedom Support Act provides that unless they improve their human rights record, they shouldn't get our support, and they're committing human rights abuses, they're committing war crimes. So it's inexcusable for us to continue any level of economic or military support for Azerbaijan, which they can repurpose for the use of making war on their neighbors. So that's the first step. The second step is sanctions. The resolution I introduced today not only calls for the recognition of Artsakh, but also calls for sanctions on Azerbaijan. We should also be working to support a war crimes investigation and prosecution of those responsible for the rape and the murder, the desecration of Armenian dead, and the continued captivity of prisoners of war in violation of international law. So these are all things that the United States international community should be pursuing.
As Azerbaijan continues the blockade of the Lachin corridor, while people in Artsakh are facing humanitarian crisis, Armenia's government has called for an international monitoring group to be sent to the Lachin corridor. What's your assessment? How do you think this will help in this situation?
It would certainly help, and indeed, this is another thing that should have been done years ago. I was urging, along with others, that we install ceasefire monitoring equipment along the border, along the line of contact, so that when there was aggression, when bullets started flying, we could tell where it started and who it started with. Now, of course, Armenia and Artsakh supported that, but Azerbaijan opposed it. And of course, they opposed it because they're the aggressor. And they knew that monitors, either electronic monitors or personnel, would report and document that the aggression was being initiated by Baku. But we should have insisted on it, and we should insist on it still. The Russians are fully occupied in their own naked war of aggression against Ukraine. They are not able to monitor the peace in Artsakh or Armenia. They're not willing to enforce the peace, notwithstanding the flagrant violations of the agreement by Azerbaijan. And so the international community, I think, really needs to step up.
So what do you think? What should the international society do to prevent future genocides from happening?
I think the most important thing is to speak and act early when you see the first signs of aggression. It's been years of Azerbaijan shooting across the line of contact and killing people. And throughout that period, all too many countries, including the United States, use this language of false equivalence and merely called on both sides to stop the violence. And I continue to urge our ambassadors to the region, to the Minsk group, to stop engaging in this language of equivalence, because it encourages the aggressor. If a belligerent knows that they will never be called out, that the worst that will happen if they kill people is that both sides will be asked to stop, then it's an encouragement to the aggressor. And if you continue funding the aggressor, it's even more of an encouragement. And so for years we saw this. For years I urged Democratic and Republican administrations to stop engaging in the language of equivalence and to start sanctioning the belligerent. But that didn't happen. And tragically, I think Azerbaijan took that as a green light to make war in 2020 and to continue further acts of violence and this blockade. So if we want Baku to stop, we need to stop engaging in the same kind of conduct that got us into this very precarious position.
And the last question, do you have any plans to visit Armenia in the near future?
I've been to Armenia and to Artsakh in the past. I look forward to going back. I don't have a particular date in mind, but I think it's very important for members of Congress to visit, to show support, to understand the situation on the ground. So I look forward to doing that again.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to join you.